The office loomed in silence, its vast emptiness magnified by the faint hum of the air conditioner and the distant glow of the city beyond the glass walls. Alexander Crane sat motionless at the head of the long mahogany table. His tie loosened, his jacket draped carelessly over the back of his chair. His reflection stared back at him from the polished surface, cold and unfamiliar. It was his birthday, though nothing in the room betrayed the occasion. No balloons, no cards, not even a polite acknowledgement from his staff earlier in the day. He had spent the morning buried in reports, the afternoon swallowed by endless meetings, and the evening watching the office slowly empty. One by one, his employees had left with cheerful goodbyes to one another, rushing home to their families, to dinners, to laughter. No one lingered, no one turned back. No one noticed the quiet man who built the empire they worked for. For years, Alexander had told himself it didn't matter. Success required sacrifice, and he had made plenty. Friends, holidays, love. But as he sat in the stillness, the weight of his solitude pressed against his chest like a stone. On the table before him was a glass of whiskey he had poured but never touched. The amber liquid glowed faintly in the dim light, a reminder of celebrations he used to have, parties in his younger days, his mother's voice singing softly over a cake with too many candles, the rare warmth of people who truly cared. Now he had only silence, an empire that stretched high into the skyline, and an empty apartment waiting for him at the end of the night. He leaned back in his chair, running a tired hand through his graying hair, his mind drifting in the hollow quiet. The skyscrapers outside sparkled with life, restaurants full of chatter, homes glowing with warmth. But here at the top of his glass tower, the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Every tick reminded him that another year had slipped away. Another year older, another year lonelier. And then footsteps. Soft, small, unexpected. They echoed faintly through the corridor, too light to belong to any of his staff. He frowned, straightening, his brows knitting together. It was late, past midnight, nearly everyone gone. Yet the sound grew closer, a gentle patter against the polished floor, until finally the conference room door creaked open. A small face peeked in. Alexander blinked, almost startled, as a little girl stepped shyly inside, clutching something in her hands. Moment, her small frame dwarfed by the height of the conference room. Her eyes darted nervously around the darkened office before settling on him. She held a paper plate, wrapped carefully in a layer of foil, as though it were the most precious treasure she had. With hesitant steps, she crossed the wide room, her shoes tapping softly against the polished floor. Alexander straightened in his chair, confused at first, and then remembering this must be the janitor's daughter. He had seen her a few times in the halls, waiting patiently while her father worked late. Normally, she kept to herself, tucked away with a coloring book or sitting quietly on a bench. But tonight she was walking directly toward him, her face bright with a kind of innocence and courage that disarmed him. When she reached the table, she carefully set the plate down in front of him. Her voice was soft but steady, carrying a warmth he hadn't heard in years. "I saved you some cake, mister." For a moment, Alexander just stared at her, unsure how to react. The words lodged in his throat, caught somewhere between disbelief and an ache he didn't recognize until now. Slowly, almost reverently, he reached out and peeled back the foil. Beneath it lay a slightly uneven slice of chocolate cake, homemade, with crumbs clinging to the edges and icing that had smudged a little in transit. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished, but it was real, rich with the scent of cocoa and sugar, carrying the unmistakable mark of love. Something shifted inside him. He had eaten in the finest restaurants, tasted the rarest wines, cut into birthday cakes crafted by world-class chefs, but never had a simple piece of cake felt so heavy with meaning. He looked at the little girl again, her wide eyes filled with a quiet pride, as though she had given him something no one else could. "You saved this for me?" he asked, his voice low, almost rough. She nodded quickly. "Mama baked it. We had a little party at home, but I thought maybe you didn't have any cake today." The words struck him harder than he expected. His chest tightened, and before he could stop himself, a smile, small, genuine, unguarded, tugged at his lips. He felt the sting of tears at the back of his eyes, though he blinked them away before she could see. For years, he had been surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Money, influence, favor, but here was a child, offering him the simplest of gifts with no expectation in return. He picked up the fork she had tucked under the foil and took a bite. The cake was sweet, a little crumbly, not perfect, but it warmed him in a way no luxury ever had. "Thank you," he whispered. And the words carried more weight than any boardroom speech he had ever given.